In a far-off corner of the galaxy, a peaceful alien species called the Arthians faced an unimaginable crisis. For years, their planet had been dying. The once lush green forests and bright blue skies were now reduced to barren wastelands and toxic air. The Arthians had always been a quiet, kind people, their civilization built on art, knowledge, and wisdom. But now, their world was falling apart, and they needed help. For years, the Arthians had sent messages to the galaxy's most powerful civilizations, asking for aid. They sent countless distress signals into the vast reaches of space, hoping someone would listen. The galaxy, however, had turned a cold shoulder to their pleas. One by one, the great empires of the galaxy, huge and powerful, dismissed the Arthians as a lost cause. They considered them a small, weak species, unworthy of their attention. No one cared. The Arthians were forgotten. The Arthians didn't have weapons or vast fleets of ships. Their strength lay in their culture, their kindness, and their deep knowledge of the universe. But when their world began to die, none of that seemed to matter. The great galactic powers turned away from their plight, deciding that helping the Arthians was not worth their time. The rich and powerful alien species of the galaxy were too busy with their own problems, their own wars, and their own resources. They had no space for the Arthians' cries for help. Despite this, the Arthians refused to give up. Their scientists and leaders knew that their planet could still be saved. They just needed someone to hear them, someone who cared. So, they sent out one last, desperate signal, a faint cry into the cold void of space, hoping against hope that someone, anyone, would answer. The signal was weak, barely strong enough to reach anyone beyond their own system. But somehow, against all odds, it reached a small, new species, a species that had only just begun to explore the stars. It was Earth. At first, the signal was almost lost in the sea of noise and messages that filled the galaxy's communication networks. But there was a small team on Earth, an unexpected team of scientists, diplomats, and explorers who noticed the faint message. Unlike the powerful empires of the galaxy, this group of humans believed in the importance of helping others, no matter how small or distant they were. The team had spent years studying deep space, searching for signals from alien life. And now, they had found one. The leader of this team, Commander Nia Wilkes, was a determined woman. She had always believed that humanity had a unique role to play in the galaxy. While other species had become obsessed with power and control, she believed that humans could be different. They could be the ones who made a difference in the lives of those who needed help. Commander Wilkes and her team had no idea what the message was about or who it was from, but they knew it was important. It wasn't like the typical signals they had received from distant stars. This one was something different. It was filled with urgency and fear, and it was clear that whoever sent it was in desperate need of help. Wilkes and her team made a quick decision. They would not ignore the signal like the other galactic powers had. They would answer it. The team's small fleet of ships, far less advanced than the massive warships of the galaxy's superpowers, set course for the coordinates of the signal. The humans knew they didn't have much in the way of weapons or advanced technology, but they had something more important, a deep desire to help. As their ships left Earth's atmosphere, the human crew could only imagine what awaited them. Would they find a planet in ruins, or was there still time to save the Arthians? Would the galaxy's great powers try to stop them, or would they be allowed to do what they felt was right? No one knew, but Commander Wilkes and her team were ready for whatever came next. They were going to answer a call for help that no one else cared to hear. Back on Earth, as the fleet set out into deep space, the world held its breath. The humans had decided to make a stand, to do something that the galaxy had refused to do for so long. Help the forgotten. The Arthians, meanwhile, could only wait. They had sent their last plea for aid, and now they would see if anyone would listen. As the human fleet traveled through the vastness of space, Commander Nia Wilkes couldn't help but feel the weight of what they were doing. They were heading into the unknown, far beyond Earth's familiar stars, to a planet that many had already given up on. The Arthenians had sent their distress signal, and now humanity was answering it, despite the risks, despite the odds. The fleet was small, only a few ships, nothing compared to the massive fleets of the galaxy's great empires. But what the humans lacked in size, they made up for with determination. There were no huge battleships or towering war machines, only carefully built spacecrafts, each one filled with a mix of scientists, engineers, and diplomats. These people believed in one thing above all: the idea that life, every life, deserved a chance, no matter how far away, no matter how difficult. As the fleet sailed deeper into space, Naya spent many nights staring at the starry sky, wondering what they would find. Would the Arthenians still be alive? Would they be able to help them? The more she thought about it, the more determined she became. Humanity was often seen as young and inexperienced compared to the ancient civilizations of the galaxy, but Naya knew that humans had something that the others didn't: heart. Humans were driven by empathy, by the belief that kindness could change the course of history. The journey to the Arthian system was long. The ships traveled through uncharted space, passing by strange stars and mysterious planets. The crew often encountered space phenomena that would have been dangerous to any other ship, but they were lucky. The human ships were built with technology that was simple but incredibly reliable. They weren't the most advanced, but they were tough. And as they approached the Arthian system, the crew began to feel a sense of anticipation. Finally, after weeks of travel, the fleet arrived at their destination. They saw the planet, the Arthian homeworld, through the viewports. It was a beautiful planet once, covered in oceans and green forests. Now it looked very different. The sky was thick with dark clouds, and the land below was a barren landscape, as if the planet was slowly giving up on life. The few patches of green that remained were struggling, barely alive. The entire planet seemed to be holding its breath, waiting. Are they still alive? Someone asked quietly over the communication system. Naya didn't have an answer. All she could do was look at the planet and hope that the Arthians hadn't given up, that they were still there, still waiting for help. The fleet slowly entered orbit around the planet, and the crew prepared to make contact. Naya sent a message to the surface, introducing themselves as Earth's response to the Arthians' call for help. The humans offered hope. Help was coming, and they were not alone anymore. The response was almost immediate. A faint signal crackled through the ship's communication system. It was weak, but it was there. A voice came through, shaky and unsure. It was the voice of an Arthian leader, a representative of the survivors. Their message was full of relief, but also filled with sadness. They hadn't expected anyone to come. For so long, they had been abandoned, forgotten. But now, the humans had arrived. The humans wasted no time. Naya and her team began to prepare for a landing. The plan was simple: get to the surface, make contact with the Arthians, and see what could be done. But as they prepared to leave their ships, Naya couldn't shake the feeling that they might be too late. What if there was no one left to save? What if the planet was beyond repair? "Commander Wilkes," said one of the officers on the ship, "we're ready for landing. The Arthians are waiting for us on the surface." Naya nodded, trying to push aside her doubts. She couldn't afford to hesitate. If they had any hope of saving the Arthians, they had to act now. She gave the order for the landing to proceed. The human ships slowly descended toward the surface of the planet. As they approached, Naya's heart raced. She had never been this far from home before, and she knew that everything depended on this moment. What they did here could change the future of the Arthian species, and maybe even the future of humanity's place in the galaxy. As the ships touched down on the surface, the crew exited, stepping onto the dusty ground. The air was thin, but breathable, and in front of them stood the Arthians, their figures tall and slender, their faces a mixture of relief and exhaustion. They were a beautiful species, with skin that shimmered like the stars and eyes that seemed to hold ancient wisdom. But their once vibrant world had drained their strength. They were weak, frail, and many looked close to collapse. The humans were met with open arms, but it was clear that the Arthians had little left to give. Despite their grace, their beauty, and their intelligence, they were on the edge of survival. "We never thought anyone would come," the Arthian leader said, their voice trembling. "Thank you." Nea smiled softly. "We're here, and we won't leave until you're safe." And so, humanity began its mission to help the forgotten, to protect the weak, and to show the galaxy that compassion could still change the course of the stars. As the humans stepped onto the surface of the Arthian planet, the sight before them was heartbreaking. The landscape, once filled with lush forests and sparkling oceans, was now a vast wasteland. The sky was dark and heavy, clouds swirling like they were grieving for the planet's lost beauty. Where there had once been life, there was only silence. The Arthians, though their bodies were fragile, stood tall and proud. They watched the humans approach with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. For so long, they had been forgotten. The galaxy's great empires had turned away from them, leaving them to wither away on their own. Now the humans had arrived, but would they truly be able to save them? The question hung heavy in the air. Commander Nida Wilkes took a deep breath, looking around at the desolate planet. This was not what she had imagined when they first received the distress signal. She had thought there would be more life, more color. But instead, all she saw was a planet on the edge of death. She turned to the Arthian leader, who had introduced themselves as Talira. "We are here to help," Naya said softly, trying to keep her voice steady despite the weight of the situation. "Tell us what you need. What can we do?" Talira's eyes shimmered with a mix of gratitude and sadness. "We need much, Commander. Our planet is dying. Our ecosystems are collapsing. The plants that used to provide us with food are no longer growing. The air has become toxic. Our people are becoming weak." The humans listened carefully, taking in every word. Naya and her team were scientists and engineers, but they knew that saving a planet was not something that could be done quickly. The damage was deep, and it would take time, resources, and careful planning. Talira continued, "We have tried everything. Our scientists have worked tirelessly to fix the problems, but we lack the technology and knowledge to reverse the damage. We are not as advanced as other species in the galaxy. All we can do now is wait. Wait to see if the end will come." Naya's heart ached as she listened. No one should have to wait for death. The Arthians had once been a thriving race, known for their art, their peaceful ways, and their wisdom. To see them now, so broken and hopeless, was almost too much to bear. But she wasn't about to give up. Not when they had come so far. "Then we'll help you rebuild," Naya said firmly. "We might not have all the answers, but we'll work with you. Together, we can find a way to bring life back to your planet." The humans quickly set up their base camp near the ruins of a once beautiful city. The Arthians led them to what remained of their research facilities, and soon the two species were working side by side, combining their knowledge and skills. The humans used their advanced technology to analyze the planet's atmosphere, the soil, and the water. They discovered that the air was filled with harmful chemicals, and the soil had become dry and infertile. The Arthians had tried to create machines to purify the air and restore the soil, but their technology was outdated. The humans, however, brought new ideas. They shared their methods of sustainable farming, and their scientists worked on creating machines that could clean the air and filter the water. In the meantime, Naya took the opportunity to learn more about the Arthians. She spent time with Talira, who showed her their ancient records and artifacts. It was clear that the Arthians had once been a species of great depth and creativity. They had an impressive understanding of the universe and had even made incredible advances in art and philosophy. "You know, Commander," Talira said one evening, as they sat under a sky filled with the faint glow of distant stars, "we once believed that the universe was a place of infinite possibilities. We thought that there was always something more to discover, something new to learn. But now, we've lost that hope. It feels like the universe has closed its doors on us. Naya listened quietly, her heart heavy with the weight of Talira's words. She could understand the feeling of hopelessness. It was easy to forget that even the most advanced species could falter, that no one was safe from the forces of time and nature. But she refused to believe that it was too late. "We may have come late," Naya said, her voice gentle, "but we haven't come empty-handed. We can help you open those doors again. Together, we can find the answers you've been searching for. And we'll do it, step by step." Talira smiled faintly, but there was a spark of hope in her eyes. Perhaps, just perhaps, this small human group was the answer they had been waiting for. As the humans continued to work, they began to see signs of life returning to the planet. The air slowly became cleaner, and small patches of green began to appear where the soil had once been barren. It was a slow process, but it was progress. The humans were not just saving a planet. They were restoring hope to a species that had been forgotten by the rest of the galaxy. And in doing so, they were proving to themselves and to the galaxy that sometimes the smallest and youngest among them could make the biggest difference. As the humans worked alongside the Arthians to restore their planet, a quiet tension began to grow. The mission was moving forward. Small signs of hope were emerging in the once barren soil, but there were still many challenges ahead. Despite the progress being made on the planet's surface, back in the galaxy's capital, things were not as hopeful. The Arthians' message had reached the far corners of the galaxy, but the response from the other galactic powers was cold. The Valter Empire, the most advanced and powerful race in the galaxy, had dismissed the human effort as a waste of time. The Xylith Consortium, with their vast wealth and resources, had made it clear they saw no reason to intervene. The Arthians had already been abandoned by those who ruled the galaxy, and no one seemed willing to change that now. On Earth, Commander Naya Wilkes and her team knew the truth. The galaxy's great empires had no interest in helping the Arthians. They were too busy with their own struggles, too focused on their own power, to care about a dying species on the edge of the galaxy. To the Valter, the Arthians were a forgotten race, their plight unworthy of attention. To the Xylith, they were an economic liability, no longer useful to anyone. The human fleet, now stationed in orbit around the Arthian planet, continued its work in the face of this indifference. The silence from the rest of the galaxy was deafening. It became clear that Earth, alone, had chosen to act. Commander Wilkes stood on the bridge of the lead ship, gazing at the planet below. The crew had worked tirelessly for weeks, improving the air quality, restoring the soil, and even helping the Arthians grow crops once more. But no one else was watching. No one else was joining in the effort. "We're making progress here," Lieutenant Alvarez, the lead scientist on the team, said one day as they reviewed data from the surface. "The crops are starting to take root, and the air is getting cleaner. It's slow, but we're doing it." Naya nodded, but the feeling of isolation lingered. "That's good, but we need more help. The resources we have are limited. If we could get support from the larger galactic powers, we could speed things up. We could save this planet before it's too late." Alvarez looked at her, his expression serious. "You know that's not going to happen. The Valter won't care. The Xylith will never invest in something that doesn't make them money. We're on our own in this." Naya's shoulders slumped. She had known this, of course, but hearing it spoken aloud made it all the more real. The galaxy was indifferent, and Earth was the only one willing to step up. Meanwhile, the Arthian leader, Talira, had begun to notice the growing silence as well. She had hoped that once the message reached the galaxy, there would be a wave of support, a rush of ships and resources to save her people. But as the weeks passed and nothing changed, her hope began to fade. She could see it in the eyes of her people. They had waited so long for help, but now, even the humans seemed to be running out of time. Talira approached Naya one evening, her face full of concern. "I fear that the galaxy has truly forgotten us," she said softly. "We thought someone would come, but we were wrong. No one cares about the Artheans anymore." Naya sighed. It was a feeling she had shared for a long time, but hearing it from Talira made it all the more painful. "We're doing everything we can," Naya replied, her voice firm but full of emotion. "I promise you, we won't stop. Earth won't turn its back on you." Talira nodded, but her eyes were full of doubt. "I want to believe that. But if no one else comes, what will become of us?" For the first time, Naya didn't have an answer. She didn't know what else to say. Back in the galaxy's capital, the indifference of the galactic powers was becoming more apparent with each passing day. The Valter and the Xylith Empire were focused on their own political games and economic power struggles. They didn't have the time to waste on a planet that was dying. The Artheans were nothing but a distant memory to them, an insignificant species in a forgotten corner of space. But then, something unexpected happened. The humans received a message from a small but influential group of independent traders and explorers. They had heard about the humans' mission and the progress they had made on the Arthean planet. These independent groups, though small and scattered, had a deep sense of compassion. They had been watching the humans work with growing respect. They knew that if they acted together, they might be able to help. "We may not be powerful," the message read, "but we can join you. The Artheans need all the help they can get, and we want to be part of something that's truly making a difference." Naya's heart lifted as she read the message. It wasn't much, but it was a start. For the first time since they had arrived, it felt like the galaxy was waking up. Even if the empires wouldn't listen, perhaps others would. "We have help coming," Naya said to her team, a spark of hope in her voice. "It's not much, but it's something. And together, we'll keep fighting for the Artheans." The galaxy might have turned away, but humanity's fight was far from over. And maybe, just maybe, the spark of compassion that humanity had ignited could light the way for others. The message from the independent traders and explorers had been a beacon of hope for the humans on the Arthean planet. It was small, but it was enough to remind them that they weren't completely alone. In the face of the galaxy's indifference, these smaller groups had shown the courage to stand with the humans. They weren't part of the great galactic empires, but they were driven by something just as powerful: the desire to do what was right. Commander Nida Wilkes wasted no time. She called a meeting with her team to plan their next steps. The additional support, though not much, would still help. Every extra resource, every extra hand, could make a difference in the long run. "We may not have the fleets or the power of the Valter, but we have something they don't," Naya said to her team. "We have the will to help. We have the will to do what's right." Lieutenant Alvarez, the lead scientist, nodded in agreement. "Exactly. These smaller groups, they'd been watching us. They know that if we succeed, it could set a new example. We have to keep pushing forward. For the Artheans, for humanity, and for the galaxy." As the weeks passed, the independent groups began to arrive. One by one, small ships from various species, ranging from humans to alien races, came into orbit around the Arthean planet. Each ship carried supplies, medical equipment, and engineers eager to help. It wasn't a large fleet, but the combined effort felt like a wave of change. The humans, the Artheans, and their new allies worked together, united by a common goal: to restore the planet. Naya watched as the teams worked day and night, planting seeds, purifying water, and repairing the planet's damaged atmosphere. Slowly, but surely, life began to return to the surface. The once barren landscape began to show signs of green. The air grew cleaner with each passing day, and the crops, which had been nearly impossible to grow before, began to flourish. It wasn't perfect, and there was still a long way to go, but the difference was undeniable. Talira, the Arthean leader, was overwhelmed with emotion. She had never imagined that her people would see this kind of progress again. For so long, they had believed that they were alone, that no one cared. But now, They were receiving help from all corners of the galaxy, from species that they had never expected to support them. It was a miracle. "You've given us hope, Commander," Talira said one day as she and Naya stood overlooking a field of new crops. "We never thought we would see the day when our planet began to heal." I can't thank you enough." Naya smiled, though there was still much work to be done. "It's not just me, Talira. It's all of us working together. We're just getting started." The humans, along with their new allies, continued to make progress on the planet. They worked on restoring the oceans, reintroducing wildlife, and rebuilding the cities that had once thrived. The Arthians, who had once been on the brink of extinction, now had a reason to hope again. But the challenges were far from over. The planet's ecosystem had been damaged so severely that it would take decades, if not centuries, to fully restore it. The humans and their allies knew this, and they remained committed to the long-term effort. It would not be easy, but they would see it through. The Arthians were not just a species worth saving. They were a species worth fighting for. And then, something unexpected happened. News of the humans' efforts on the Arthian planet spread through the galaxy. Though the galaxy's major empires had ignored the Arthians, the actions of the small groups, the independent traders and explorers, began to inspire others. The idea that one species could help another, without asking for anything in return, began to resonate with more and more people. A few weeks after the small fleets had arrived to help, a larger ship came into orbit around the Arthian planet. It was from a neutral planet, not a part of any empire. The crew on board were diplomats and activists, people who had been watching the humans work and had decided that it was time for them to join in. They brought with them a fleet of ships, medical ships, cargo vessels filled with supplies, and even engineers and scientists ready to lend their expertise. "We saw what you've done here," said Captain Norin, the leader of the new fleet, as he spoke with Naya. "And we believe that the galaxy needs to see what can happen when we work together. It's time to stop turning away from those in need. We're here to help." Naya's heart swelled with hope as she looked at the fleet that had arrived. It wasn't just humanity anymore. It was the beginning of a movement. Slowly, the idea that compassion and cooperation could heal a broken planet was spreading. For the first time in a long while, Naya felt that they might actually succeed. The Arthians were still far from recovery, but with each new ally, with each new effort, the chance of a brighter future grew. And the humans, who had once been small and unknown in the galaxy, had proven that sometimes the greatest power lay not in weapons or technology, but in the ability to care. "Together, we can do this," Naya said, looking at the Arthians and their new allies. "Together, we can heal not just this planet, but the galaxy itself." And with that, a new chapter began, not just for the Arthians, but for all who believed in the power of kindness and unity. The Arthian planet was slowly but surely showing signs of recovery. The crops had grown stronger, the air was noticeably cleaner, and for the first time in decades, there were green fields where once there had been nothing but dust. The combined efforts of the humans and their allies were making a difference, but there was still so much work to do. Naya Wilkes walked through the restored fields, her boots crunching softly on the fresh soil. The air was fresh now, tinged with the scent of new life. For a moment, she closed her eyes, letting herself feel the progress. It was a far cry from the bleak, dead world they had first arrived on. The Arthians were rebuilding their homes, their cities, and their hope. But something still gnawed at Naya. Despite the progress, there were challenges on the horizon. The planet's ecosystem was fragile, and every success felt like a step toward an uncertain future. The people of Arthia were beginning to recover, but the planet was still deeply scared. Naya knew that even with all their combined efforts, true recovery would take time. Decades, maybe even longer. Still, the changes were undeniable. Children played in the newly restored fields, their laughter carrying in the wind. The Arthians had hope in their eyes again, and Naya couldn't help but feel a deep sense of pride. They had done it. Against all odds, they had brought the planet back from the brink of disaster. Naya sat down beside Talira, the Arthean leader, who was watching her people work. The two women had grown close over the course of the mission, their bond deepening with every passing day. They had been through so much together. From the fear and uncertainty at the beginning to the slow but steady progress they were seeing now, they had both endured the weight of a planet's despair. "You've done it, Commander," Talira said quietly, her voice filled with emotion. "I never believed this could happen. I thought our time was over." Naya smiled softly, placing a hand on Talira's. "We've done it together. This is your home, your people. You never gave up on them, even when it seemed like no one else would. That's what kept this planet alive." The two women sat in silence for a few moments, watching as the Arthurians continued their work. But just as the calm settled over them, an urgent message crackled through Naya's comm device, breaking the quiet. "Commander Wilkes, we need you back on the ship immediately," came the voice of Lieutenant Alvarez, her lead scientist. "There's something you need to see." Naya and Talira exchanged a quick glance. There was something in Alvarez's voice that made Naya's stomach tighten. She stood quickly, motioning for Talira to follow. When they arrived on the ship, the atmosphere was tense. Alvarez and the rest of the scientific team were gathered around a holographic display, their faces grim. On the screen was a map of the planet's ecosystem, showing the progress they had made over the last few months. "What's going on, Alvarez?" Naya asked, her voice steady but laced with concern. Alvarez pointed to a small red area on the map. "This is a region we've been monitoring closely. The crops were growing well. The air was improving, but something's changed. We're seeing a rapid decline in the soil quality here. It's happening faster than we expected." Naya felt a pang of fear. "What does that mean? Can we stop it?" "We don't know yet," Alvarez replied, shaking his head. "It's like something is attacking the land, and it's spreading faster than we can analyze it. It could set us back months, maybe even years. We need to find out what's causing this before it spreads further." Talira stepped forward, her expression one of concern. "We've fought so hard to bring our planet back. We can't let this destroy everything we've worked for." Naya looked at the map again, her mind racing. There had to be something they could do. They had already faced so many challenges, but this was different. If they didn't figure out what was happening, everything could unravel in an instant. "We'll get to the bottom of this," Naya said, her voice resolute. "Alvarez, gather your team. I want to visit the affected area. We'll investigate on the ground." Alvarez nodded and quickly set to work preparing for the mission. Naya knew that they couldn't afford to waste time. The Artheans had come so far, and they weren't about to let their progress be undone. As they made their way to the affected region, Naya's mind kept returning to the question, what could be causing this sudden decline? The soil had been healing. The crops were thriving. It didn't make sense for things to suddenly fall apart like this. When they reached the location, Naya was struck by the stark contrast between the thriving fields just miles away and the devastated land before her. The soil had turned dry and cracked, and the plants that had been growing strong only days before were now withered and dying. It was as though the land had been poisoned. "We'll need to collect samples," Alvarez said as he began to scan the area with his equipment. "This could be a result of some kind of contamination or an unknown environmental factor. We'll have to act fast." As the team worked, Naya walked through the dead fields, her heart heavy. It felt like they were taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back. But even in the face of this setback, she refused to give up. The Artheans had already shown incredible strength. They would get through this too, and they would find out what was causing the damage, no matter the cost. The crisis on the Arthian planet had become more urgent than ever. The once thriving fields were now dying, and the mysterious blight was spreading faster than the team had feared. The humans, the Artheans, and their allies were all working around the clock to find a solution, but time was running out. Naya Wilkes stood on the edge of the dead fields, staring at the decaying crops, her mind racing. They had come so far, and now everything they had worked for was in jeopardy. "Commander," said Lieutenant Alvarez, approaching with a grim look on his face, "we've analyzed the soil samples, and we found something. It's not a natural phenomenon. The soil is being poisoned by an unknown substance." Naya's heart sank. Poisoned? How is that even possible? "We're not sure yet," Alvarez replied. "But the substance is spread evenly across the affected area. It seems to be both organic and chemical, almost like someone engineered it." Naya's thoughts raced. Could someone be sabotaging their efforts? Could there be another force at work here, trying to stop the recovery of the planet? Could it be a weapon of some kind? Naya asked, her voice tense with concern. "It's possible," Alvarez said, shaking his head. "But we've never seen anything like this before. Whatever it is, it's a threat to everything we've worked for." Talira, the Arthian leader, stepped forward. She had heard the conversation and understood the gravity of the situation. "We can't let this destroy our home," she said firmly. "You humans have shown us what it means to fight for a future. We will fight this too." Naya looked at her, grateful for her strength. The Arthians had been through so much, and now they were facing yet another challenge. But Naya knew that together they would not give up. They had come too far. "We need to find the source of this," Naya said, determination in her voice. "We can't afford to wait. We have to stop this from spreading any further." The team worked tirelessly, scouring the planet's surface for any clues that could lead them to the source of the poisoning. They combed through the affected area, collecting data and samples, but nothing seemed to point to an answer. The mysterious substance was everywhere, silently creeping into the soil, affecting everything it touched. Then, after days of searching, they found something. Hidden in the ruins of an old Arthian settlement, deep in a cave system, they discovered an underground facility. The entrance had been concealed, hidden from view by the years of neglect and overgrowth. "This is it," Alvarez said, his voice filled with a mix of excitement and fear. "The source of the poisoning. It's coming from here." The team entered the facility, their hearts pounding as they made their way through the dark, narrow corridors. The air was thick with the smell of old chemicals and rust. It was clear that no one had been here in a long time. But as they reached the center of the facility, they found what they had been searching for: a large, ancient machine, still humming with power, hidden deep within the earth. "It looks like some kind of terraforming device," Alvarez said, his eyes wide with recognition. "But it's malfunctioning. It's been slowly releasing toxins into the soil for years." Naya's mind raced. The Arthians had once used this machine to help shape their planet, to make it more livable. But something had gone wrong. The machine had malfunctioned, and instead of helping the planet, it had been poisoning it. Talira stepped forward, her eyes filled with sadness. "This was supposed to help us. It was meant to heal the land, to make it thrive. But we never knew it had gone wrong." Naya turned to Alvarez. "Can we fix it? Can we stop it from releasing any more toxins?" Alvarez studied the machine, his fingers dancing across the control panel. "It's not going to be easy, but I think we can reprogram it. If we can stop the toxic release, we might be able to reverse some of the damage it's done." The team worked quickly, reprogramming the ancient machine. It was a delicate process. One mistake could make everything worse. But they were determined to succeed. The fate of the planet depended on it. Finally, after hours of tense work, Alvarez pressed the final command. The machine hummed, then fell silent. The toxic flow had stopped. "We did it," Alvarez said, breathing a sigh of relief. "The poison's been stopped." Talira let out a breath she didn't even realize she had been holding. She looked at Naya with a deep sense of gratitude. "You saved us. You saved our world." Naya smiled, though she knew the battle wasn't over. The planet had been saved from the immediate threat, but the recovery would still take years. They would have to keep working together to restore the land fully. But for now, the worst had been averted. The planet was no longer poisoned, and hope was once again burning bright. Naya looked out at the horizon, where the first signs of a new dawn were beginning to appear. "We'll rebuild," she said softly, her voice filled with quiet determination. "We'll rebuild this world, and we'll make sure that no one ever forgets what it means to stand up for what's right." Talira nodded. "Together, we'll make this planet a symbol of hope for the galaxy." And as the sun rose over the healing world, Naya knew that the fight was far from over. But with the strength of humanity and their allies, the future of the Arthians, and perhaps even the entire galaxy, had been secured. The struggle had been long, but they had shown that sometimes the greatest strength came not from weapons or armies, but from the will to do what was right.